Hi and welcome to Fabric Bias. It is July 2025 and I am revisiting a pattern I did just a few months ago. It is for I call it a flat pencil case. It's a pattern by Sewing Times. I think she called it a striped pencil case, but I will link that link below so you can go watch her video. It's really, really great, and you can make your own, get your dimensions to make your own bag, or like I did, I created pattern pieces because I knew I was going to make several of these. And it's easier if you create a pattern piece and just lay it down and trace around it each time than to redo the measurements every time. So I also, if I'm remembering correctly, I was restricted to 10 by 10 inch pieces of fabric that a friend had given me. And so I had to actually bring the pattern down a little bit, but I really like this size, so I'm going to continue to make it in this size. So I have a piece for my body pieces, the interior and the exterior body pieces. And then I have a pattern piece for the interfacing because, again, I was making several and it just made it easier. And I wanted the interfacing to be slightly smaller than the actual body piece so that I would keep some of that bulk out of the seam allowances. But this time around, so I'm not using, I actually had one piece left of that 10 by 10 fabric. For the rest of it, I'm using up some scraps that I had, but some of my scraps are not this big. However, some of them are half that size or just a little bit more than half that size. So I've created a third pattern piece because, again, I don't know how many times I'm going to be doing this. But all it is half the body piece plus 1/4 of an inch on here to add for a seam allowance so that I could piece two pieces together to make one piece this size. So it's just a half body piece. And that enabled me, so out of this, I could make 1, 2, 3, 4 bags with the scraps that I was using up. And with this, I can make, I think it's 3 more bags. There's 1, 2, yeah, 3 more bags, and get rid of more of the scraps by doing it this way. Because in some of these, either the 2 pieces that I chose was not big enough to get this, or one of the 2 pieces wasn't big enough, or I guess I shouldn't say one because, you know, there were multiple pieces. It took multiple quantities to get to this. So, I mean, you could even go smaller. My daughter, what she did, okay, so this is the reason I'm doing this right now. My daughter, I gave one of the bags that I made earlier this year to my daughter, and she's been using, actually, instead of her pencils, she's been putting her sunglasses in them. And she wanted to recreate that pattern, and she showed it to me, and she said, sunglass case, and I'm like, okay, well, I have a pattern around here somewhere. She just recreated it herself without the pattern, but just with the idea. So not the same, but similar. But she was using up, she just pieced together all of her scraps and made a piece of fabric and then cut that to what she needed to make the pattern, the sunglass case that she wanted to make, modeled off of this one. So you can actually piece together little pieces of fabric and then put this on it, cut around it. I would just be careful about making sure you're back tacking so that it doesn't open up. But there's that. So I have a new pattern piece here, and the reason I recreated it, because really literally all you have to do is do this, add 1/4 inch on that one, is because I thought maybe my daughter would like to, you know, sew it using this pattern, and so I wanted to have the pieces for her. Besides these, you do need a flap piece or 2 pieces for the flap, and you can either go interior exterior or just 2 exteriors, or, you know, whatever you like. It's creative. And I did not create for this one, I didn't create a pattern for the flap because it's just a square, and then you just have to round the edges on the side, the base. And I can show you, I've got this one actually stitched in place because I really ran out of fabric and I had to, had to piece it. Had to piece a couple pieces together to make it work, and so I was playing with this one, and so I actually already sewed this one together to make it work. But that's pretty much it. It's just a rectangle like this, 2 rectangles, and then you sew it together. Well, you curve it and then you sew it together. So curve, curve here. And what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to take mine, make sure they're nicely lined up so I don't miscut anything. And then I'm going to just fold them and match them up like that. And then I will just estimate a curve with my scissors, but you could use something round and draw around it to make your curve if you're more comfortable with that too. So, but I do it with scissors. If it's a bigger curve, sometimes I'll do it the other way. So you need the two flat pieces on. If you're going to do the pencil case the way Sewing Times does it, she also puts these really cute decorative tabs on. I'm not going to do that with these. I'm just going to do with the bodies and the flaps, but I do like having a fabric loop, so I am going to add a fabric loop to all of these as well, which I've actually already got pressed and ready to go. And these are really easy to do. I just used whatever scraps I had left over after I cut all the big pieces out, and I cut them to pretty much 1.5 inches wide by whatever length. Here we go, 1.5. And I think these are, let's see, I think most of them turned out to be about 5 inches. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, about 5 inches. It could be a little shorter if you wanted to. So you just take it, fold it in half, press it, open it back up, put the ends, the raw edges into that long fold you just made, press it again, fold it in half, and then press it back in half like that. And I have them clipped so that because I didn't know when I was going to get back to sewing, and I just want them to stay closed. So I have all of those folded, and these are ready to sew. For my body pieces, I am going to use, I don't remember what I did before, probably fusible fleece. But I opted this time around. I'm definitely going to be using fusible fleece for my body pieces, and I'm just going to use a piece on the exterior. On the flaps, I'm also going to put fusible fleece on the exterior piece, but because the snap is snapping open on the interior side piece, I'm also going to put a little bit of Shape Flex on the side where the curve is, so that I'm hoping that's helpful with the snap, because the snap is going to be pulling from that direction. I don't know, just makes me feel better. That's kind of what I'm doing. So interfacing on the outside of the flap with the with the fusible fleece, and on the interior with just a strip where I'm going to be putting the snap for Shape Flex, and then the exterior with the fusible fleece. And I'm not really going to worry about the interior of the body, because the snap snaps towards the exterior. I don't know if that makes sense, but in my brain that makes sense to me, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm actually at the stage where I have to put the fusible fleece on, except only for these. For these ones, because I am sewing two pieces together. On this one, I'm sewing two pieces of interior together, two pieces of exterior together. I'm sewing two exterior pieces together on this one and two exterior pieces here. So I want to sew my two exteriors together, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance along these lines, and press them, and then I will put the interfacing on. So after, of course, I make sure it matches, the interior and the interior actually come out matching, because sometimes when you sew, they don't always come out the way you expect it to. So that's what I'm going to do next. I have to get these pieces sewn together to create whole pieces like this, and then I can start pressing everything together. I can start creating my curves and sewing my flaps together. But yes, right now, stitch these together and then press on my exterior interfacing, and then I will move to the flaps. All right, I will be back in just a little bit. So I've done just a little bit. I went ahead and stitched my fabric loops together in a chain. I have them all chained together so I don't lose any of them. On my exterior pieces, I stitched together the pieces that were smaller, of the two halves together to make a whole, and matched them up with their opposite pieces. So in this case, this one, both the interior, the lining, and the exterior pieces needed to be two halves that had to be stitched together. Once everything was stitched together on my exterior pieces that were two halves, I went ahead then pressed on the interfacing to do that. On this particular lining, actually I did not have two half-size pieces to stitch together, so this is the point where I pieced it first and then cut out the pattern piece from that, because I had a big piece and I had a little piece, but I didn't have two medium-sized pieces, so I couldn't do what I was doing with the rest of them. But I really liked how this matched, so I went ahead and pieced it together to use that. So the interfacing is pressed on all the body exterior pieces, and that's waiting for the next step. I'm going to put these here so I don't forget to actually sew them in on the next step, because I'm super famous for leaving out the fabric loops and then having to go rip a little hole and feed them in. I do that a lot. I usually try to remind myself, and I may go do that with some clips so I don't forget to put them on there. I'll put a clip where I'm going to put the line for this piece. So yeah, hopefully that will work. Actually, I might just clip them on. All right, so on the flaps. So the flaps were just rectangles. First thing I did was I took them and I cut curves just with scissors, not with pinking shears, but just with scissors. I cut curves into the rectangle pieces, and then I cut curves into the fusible, sorry, that's not the right side, the fusible fleece pieces so that they would fit on and stay away and out of the seams. And I also sort of cut curves onto the shape flex just so it would fit and I wouldn't have to cut them afterwards. And then I pressed on the fusible fleece, pressed on the shape flex, and then I sewed them together. And then I used the pinking shear around the curves on these sides just so that they will come out hopefully with a nice round curve, not too much crookediness or anything like that. And I think hopefully it'll look really nice. So these three so far have come out pretty nicely. I'm going to go ahead and flip these three in just a second. And yeah, once that's done, so what I've been doing, when I flip it right side out, I like to first press open the seam here from the inside here. So I'll press this open. I've got my brayer here to do that. And I'll press open as much as I can. I'm not worrying about the curves here because they're really hard to get to from that direction. But I'll cut the flat part here and this flat part here. I'll get as much of that pressed open in here before I turn it right side out. And then once I've got it right side out, I'll make sure that my end's lined up here. My seam is lined up on the edge, sorry, all the way around. And then I press it again with the brayer because honestly, I'm watching a video and I don't feel like getting up and going to the iron. So once I have all 6 pieces done, I'm going to go take them to the iron, press them first, and then I will go ahead and top stitch all the way around there. So that's my next thing. Finish flipping these and pressing my seams open and flipping these, and then getting them to the spot where these are, and then go take them to the iron and then top stitch, all while I'm watching my video. So I'm going to continue to do that, and I will be back in a flash. Okay, so my components are built. The last step again was putting that top stitching around my flap piece, and now I'm just going to start building my bags, and that's pretty easy to do. I think she has a really cool way of doing it where she puts the flap and attaches it to the body piece first, and then starts building the bag from there. And that is way easier than the way I was doing it, where I was building the body pieces and then try to get the flap lined up and everything. After that, this is way easier to put the flap on first. I'm also going to be stitching my fabric loop in here, mostly because that way I won't forget it. You could put it on when you're actually stitching up the sides as well. I'm going to put it on here. I am going to make sure that I'm sewing it on within the seam allowance so that that stitching doesn't show up on that. So I'm going to do that with the body pieces. And what I've done here is I'm clipping my interior pieces. I've got it clipped so that it's ready to sew, and I'm just clipping it to the opposite side of this so that they stay mated together, because I'm doing so many of them, not a ton, but you know, enough that I don't want to have to go, oh, was this the lining piece for this one, and try to have to mate them all back up again. So I'm just trying to keep all my parts together. So as I do that, I've got that done here. And sewing them together, again, you need to go watch our video so you can see this whole process here, but you can see on this one, I've already stitched the sides. I've done the other side as well. There's my fabric loop. There's my, right there, my line, my flap is right here, and you can't see it because that's the line color, but there's the flap right there. Trust me, it's there on that. And so my next step here is to make box my corners on both sides, and then I'll be doing the same thing on this one, sides, box corners, and then I can put the bag together and I'll be done. Pretty much. I think I have some top stitching left to do on that too. So that's where I'm at with my process. I'm going to start clipping get all my stuff, all my components clipped together, and made up these so that I can just start whipping them out. And yeah, I'll be done really soon, and I'll show you that in a flash. Probably it'll look a little bit, maybe it'll look a little lighter. It depends on how it rained today. So we'll see if it rains tomorrow. But yeah, it's time for me to go to bed. So I will probably do this. Hopefully I'll be able to get to it tomorrow. No plans? So, all right, for you, back in a flash. Okay, so here they are. I think when I left you, I was working on the side seams here and then boxing on all of the pieces here. I had the flaps on already, so once I got the side seams done and the boxes done on both the lining and the interfacing, I was able to, you just finish it off by tucking it inside and then stitching around, turning it right side out, and then top stitching right here. And again, you should need to go see Sewing Times to see her video to see actually how to do all of this. I don't want to step on her video. So for all the directions, you should go see hers. She does have the flap here that's super, super cute. So you need to see that because her detailing is really cute. I chose to leave that off on these. I did make them earlier on the earlier versions that I did, but you need to go see her video for that. And yeah, there it is. Let me show them to you. I think that's everything. Oh, I do want to show you on this one. So this is the one, you can see I have a seam here. This is the one where I didn't have the right size piece of lining to cut out my pattern piece. So I had a little piece and I had a big piece, but I didn't have a big enough piece, and I didn't have two pieces that were big enough to do halves. So on this one, this is the one where I stitched it together first and then cut out the pattern piece. And so I want to show you on this one, what I did was when I was placing it and putting the flap on that, I just paid attention to where that seam was to make sure that it fell to the front of the bag, because that way when you open the bag up, you don't see the big seam right in the back. You see it right here in the front. And luckily I had the forethought to actually think that through. I don't always. So, which I will tell you here. So this one, when I did this one, I was just trying to get one bag done, and this was the bag that it was going to be for some reason in my brain. And when I went to stitch the flap on, and that's great, it went on just great. But when I went and put it together and then went to do my top stitching, I didn't press it. I didn't press it well enough, and so this came out. This is the worst bag to do that in, because I had this stripe here and it came out all wonky and didn't look good. And I kind of ignored it. I don't know why, because I know this stuff bugs me. I got it all top stitch around and I kept looking at it going, I'm going to go back and fix that. So I finished all the bags, and then I went back and I ripped out the top stitching that I did on the back. And then I carefully ripped a hole into the seam, and I ripped the seam back open again so that I could play with it a little bit better. I still needed to do that. And then I went and pressed it nicely, carefully lining up the top and the bottom, or the inside and the outside lining, and was able to top stitch here again. And then, because I felt like maybe it wasn't going to be as secure, I went ahead and did a second row of stitching, which you can't even see. On this one, it ended up stitch in the ditch. That was an accident, happy accident. On this one, so you can see it on this side. I don't know if it'll show on camera, but there's 2 rows of stitching here, and on this one you see it barely on the corners here, so it came out really nice. Got a little lucky on that one. So and now I like how this striping looks here, because before it looked really bad. So that's the 2 things. Oh, let me show you all of them now. So you saw this one, there's the inside of that one, and let me show you its coordinated one. And so I do slightly different closing. So in this case, cam snaps. When I use zippers, I try to use different color zippers if I'm using the same, making the same bag and using the same fabric. I try to make them different in some way so they stand out. They go on that one, because like if I had these 2 in my purse, and I'd want to be able to look down and go, oh, I want this one. Not that I would remember, but give myself a shot at going, oh, I want the light matte turquoise versus the shiny turquoise, or grab the shiny one that's got this stuff in it. And so I try to do that. Of course, this one's already distinct, but these 2 here. So I accidentally did the exact same thing. I went with a matte and I'm going to call it shiny. There's a name for that. Matte and shiny. And on that, now this one, I was actually going to use the orange cam snap on it, but then I was like, oh, wait a minute. This one has these cute polka dots inside, and they're pink, and I think pink would be better. So a little bit of overthinking there, but I think it came out better. for that reason. So there's, oh, did I show you the inside of this one? I think I did. That was just the yellow. There you go. And then, let's see, these two. There we go. I went with two different colors. It's more on the veins of what I usually do. This has this color lining and yellow, swirly. And this one has the yellow also, tonal yellow on that. So, and this last one, it's rapidly becoming my favorite of all of them. I love them all, but I know I'm not keeping any of them this time. Is the one where I had to do two, so I had the whole body piece and then I have the two half pieces. So I had to do the two half pieces on both the exterior and the interior. And so I'm using up a lot of scraps here to do this. All of this was scraps. All of this was this fabric I've been using. This is for my friend. I've been using this for a few things. So that's, I think I just have a little bit left of this. I can't remember, but I think I'm done with that fabric, but it's too bad. It's super cute. But I was able to get 3 more by using, instead of the whole, by going with a half, I was able to get, I think, 3 more or 4, even 4. So this one was made out of both. And let's see, this one was 2 pieces. And this one was 2 pieces. And then, is it this one too? This one, I also used, I had to do a different way of piecing on that one. So I was just using up a lot of scraps. So it's super, super cool on that. So these are done on that one. Again, my favorite here. I love this fabric. I love that fabric. It's just so pretty. And it just went super, super great with this one. So, so there they are. I hope you like them. I hope that wherever and whenever you're at, you're having a great time. And thanks for watching.